Hi everyone, welcome to today's session. We have Jagriti with us, our today's guest, and this is Ramanuj Mukherjee from LawSikho. Hi Jagriti, welcome to the session.
Thank you.
Great, so we can get started. Jagriti, why don't you start by telling us a bit about yourself, what has been your career journey like, and what you currently do?
So just to begin with, something about myself. I'm Jagriti Singh. I'm from Nepal. I did my schooling in India at Mayo College Girls School. After that, I went to National Law School, Bangalore. I did my BA LLB honors from there. After which I joined Luthra and Luthra law offices as an associate. Worked there for a year, then went back to Nepal, joined as legal counsel at the investment board of the government of Nepal. I mean, it was a very interesting stint because it was financed by DFID UK. So we were like private consultants, but the investment board is a government organization. So there were some people from the bureaucracy. So it was like good first-hand experience into the government. Did a lot of mega infrastructure projects. After which I went for my master's to UC Berkeley in California. Then went back, continued at the investment board, then joined Trilegal, and then moved to Apple in India. And now I'm finally in Canada. So that's like quite a long journey.
Sure, it's a very long and exciting journey. Why Canada though? Like what prompted your move to Canada?
It was mostly personal reasons because I mean I'm not from India, and I mean this is like a little bit on the personal side, but it was, I mean, since I'm not from India and you know, like to live long term in India, I mean I wouldn't be a citizen there and paperwork and things like that. So I thought if I moved to Canada, it would be permanent, and plus my husband was moving to North America for his medical residency, so I moved here.
All right, understood. So, what has been the transition been like? Of course, like the legal system in India or even in Nepal would be significantly different from what it is like in Canada. So, if you can throw some light on that, like what has been the transition like? We'll come to the process later on. Right now, just trying to understand, you know, how is it different to work in Canada as a lawyer compared to India?
Yeah. So the legal system is common law based. So in that sense, it is similar. But there are a lot of differences because in terms of identifying with how Canadian law is, it's much closer to the US law versus English law. I mean, all of them take their roots from English law. So in terms of that, it's similar in terms of roots, but in terms of practice, in terms of concepts, it's very similar to US law. So I think having a US law background during my master's was very helpful. In terms of the process, it was a long drawn process, and someone who's interested in practicing in Canada and moving here. And so to move here, you have to qualify, you know, all your exams, pass the bar. I mean, I thought, you know, maybe with all my experience, I would find a job and it would be easy to move, you know, and of course, and everybody thinks that I'll only move once I get the job. So once, even though I had my paperwork and my PR ready, I didn't move here. So I was thinking I'll get a job and then I'll move and then I'll think about it. But it doesn't work like that because there are enough immigrants from all over the world who are, you know, thinking the same thing. And many of them are here physically. So you need to be here physically. You need to clear your exams. You need to show that you're committed to being here for them to be able to, you know, really trust that you will be in the system. So one is that. The other thing is, in terms of commitment, it is a long drawn process in terms of finances as well as in terms of time. You have to give get your assessments done. So assessments take a couple of, you know, like you can say years, not years but months, you know, because to get your documents ready, to get your unis to send the transcript and everything, it takes time. After which you have to, once you have your assessment, you have to write your exams, and the exams are they happen once in 3 months. Your results come in 3 months. I mean, you may not write all. So minimum, you'll have to write 5 exams. Maximum, there could be 11 exams. So those exams happen like 2 exams a day for 5 days in every 3 months, and your results come out after 3 months during the time of the next exam. So, I mean, I wrote one exam in January, like January 2018. I wrote my first exam, just to see what it feels like. And so I wrote the exam called Foundations of Canadian Law. I think people who have started the process would have an idea of the subjects. So I wrote that exam just to see how it is. And it felt very similar to the type of exams we have in NLS. So they're like long answers, and, it's very, it's a problem-based question, and then you write the answers. Like it's handwritten, so that was painful. Like after many years, because in my masters we used to type out the answers, so it was really hard to get back to writing. But I don't know, somehow it was done. And once I did that, my results came in 3 months. But by 3 months, I was like, okay, maybe I should wait. And then I gave my remaining 4 exams. I gave them back to back in August. My results came in November, so that's already a year gone. And when I moved here, then I passed. Once I got my results that I had passed the exams, I had to enroll for the bar exam, and the bar exam was March. So even if I did my process like really fast, like it took me and then I was called to the bar in June, so it took me exactly a year and a half to finish the process. So that was a long process.
Right. So, what is the, like, if you can tell us, you said there are like 5 exams or 11 exams. So if you can explain the difference, and, what exactly are these exams?
So these are, they want to test the first set of exams are called the NCA exams. And basically they want you to come at par with the Canadian graduates. And then you have the next stage is the bar exam, and bar exam is everybody writes the bar exam, right? The way we write it in India, even Indian graduates write it. So same way Canadian graduates also write the bar exams. For the NCA exams, it depends on your assessment. So, for us, like work, practiced, everything, you'll get like basic. So 5, everybody gets the 5. It's constitutional law, criminal law, administrative law, foundations of Canadian law, and things like that. The first exam that I gave was Foundations of Sorry.
This is the equivalency exam, right?
Yeah, this is the equivalency exam. So the exams are basically you'll be given your readings and materials the way you get a course outline, and they'll prescribe what books and all. So the other challenge is also for people like me. I wrote all my exams from India. So the benefit about these equivalency exams is that you can take them from Delhi. So that made things even easier, right? So I was working at Apple and giving these exams side by side. So if you can manage it with your work, it's a good way to fund your exams, because each exam does cost, like at that time, it would cost like about $300, $400. So, like put it all together, it is a bit expensive. So you can
how difficult or easy are these exams?
So they're problem based. You cannot do and it's open book. But the thing is, you cannot do the exams without studying, thinking that you'll just walk in with a book and be able to do it. You have to read the materials, you have to go through it, especially, I would think something like Foundations of Canadian Law. Oh, what is that? It's so simple. It's like any juris exam. But it's not like that, because they have things about Indigenous population and Indigenous people and their history, which, I mean, we have absolutely no idea about. So it takes a while for you to first be acclimatized and accustomed to things here, the culture here. I mean, if you lived here and you grew up here, it's different, right? You grew up hearing about those things. But for immigrants, I mean, you didn't hear about those things. You didn't know about those things. Even if you knew, you don't know how the context is out here. So you have to study for the exams. Like it took me a fair amount of time. Like I used to work and study side by side. So it took.
If you can give some idea about, like, how much you had to study, how many hours, for how long, for these papers.
So I would study every day so when I gave my first exam, I studied every day for about like a month or so, say 3 hours every day after work. So I just read through the materials. And the other thing is, when you go for exams, like you can't just walk in with the material, right? You have to have some notes ready. So I didn't have, because I was working, I didn't have time to prepare those notes. So it's like how you walk into an Indian open book exam, right? You'll have your case summaries. So I read the original cases, but I didn't have time to sit and prepare summaries. So for that, I mean, there's not a publicity, but this is what I used. I use this website called NCA Tutor. So they have like notes, they prepare notes and update it according to the syllabus. And I just bought the notes from there. So I had read the materials and I bought the notes and I used their notes to, to take to exam, because in exam you just need quick references, right? You say, and you have to write very long answers. So they are like substantive answer, like question. So, but I found it very similar to my exams in NLS. So that made things very easy for me.
Okay, excellent. Uh, so, we have many people logged in right now, about around, I think, 300 plus people who are logged into Zoom as well as YouTube. I would request everybody to quickly introduce yourselves in the chat, in the live chat on YouTube, or even if you are on Zoom, just tell us who you are and what are your goals, what questions you have. It will just make it so much easier for us to know how we can help you better. Okay, so coming back, if this is this is only the first step, right? The equivalency exam. After that, you have to also write the bar exam, and there's a solicitors and another bar exam for attorneys, right? So
Yeah.
do you need to take that, or with this much you can start working as a foreign consultant or something?
No, so unfortunately, as much as we like to believe that, however much of experience you may have in India, I mean, the real truth is that you need, I mean, everybody here looks for experience in Canada. And it is like an oxymoron, right? I mean, you literally just immigrated to Canada. How can you have Canadian experience? So that was a bit of a challenge, to prove yourself. So the only way for you to prove your commitment is to go to them and say, I've done my NCAs, my bar exam is on so and so date, or I've just written my bar exam. And so, it is your commitment that in the near future, yeah, it is going to happen. Luckily for me, I mean, I was offered a job. I gave my interviews in January, February, and I was offered a job at Osler in February. And my bar exam was due in March. So they were happy. But I mean, for most immigrants, I think it's really hard to get an offer like that. So I consider myself extremely lucky. The bar exam is, in terms of exam, I mean, it's very different than what we're used to. It's multiple choice, but multiple choice in this part of the world is not as simple as somewhere else. It's very tricky. And the other challenge about Canadian bar exam is that it's 2-day process. 1 day is for barristers exam, 1 day is for solicitors. It's easier than the NCA in terms of the fact that the materials are limited. They'll give you the materials and the questions will be from the materials, and it's open book, but you don't have time to sit and open the book. So it's a 7-hour exam, 3.5 hours, 1 hour lunch, and 3.5 hours per day. So it's physically very exhausting, and you have to really know the materials and be really quick to answer the questions.
Okay, so how did you study for the bar exams?
So I went through the materials a couple of like maybe once, and second time I just skimmed through it. Then there are 12 days gap between the two exams. So for the second exam, I did the same. But the key to like cracking the bar exam here is to have an index. So I found some indexes online, and by then it was a bit late. So it's funny, my husband's a doctor and he helped me prepare the index, because I realized that students here prepare like groups of 10s, and they divide the materials into portions and they sit and prepare indexes. And the indexes are so detailed that say something like, what is the limitation period for filing an like appeal, suppose, right? They would have prepared the index in terms of L, like in L, you'll see limitations, in A, you'll see appeal. So it's the same thing, which is, multiple times on however your mind processes it. And the indexes themselves are like 20 pages, 30 pages index. So the key to cracking the bar exam is to create a study group and have an index.
Makes a lot of sense. We have a training program for Indian bar exam, which is very easy. But even then, we provide an index to people who are basically failing multiple times. The solution is that use an index. So that sounds great. Maybe we should make indexes for Canadian bar exam.
Yes, absolutely.
So how is the attorney exam and the solicitor exam different? Like, is it like substantially different, or do you cover similar kind of stuff?
The barrister exam, because barristers it's more, I mean, in practice, actually, like it just depends on your practice, right? You give the law exam, some people go into litigation, some go into corporate practice. I am into corporate practice. But solicitor exam is more like the corporate practice, more about contracts and things like that. The barrister exam is more about court procedures and things like that. But then there are a lot of things which are similar in both. So like ethics, they'll ask you ethics in both. So they focus a lot on ethics here.
Right. So when you were studying, how did you study apart from the index? Did you spend a lot of time reading? And because obviously you're trying to learn the entire law of another country, so I'm sure apart from the index, how long did it take, and how much did you study for the exams?
So for the bar exam, I read the materials once, and then the
How
next
long
time,
did that take to read it once?
so it's per material, it's about 1,000 pages. So it's barrister's exam is like 1,000 something pages, and solicitors is 1,000 something pages.
And this material is provided by the bar council or something.
Yeah. So what you do is they'll provide you. They don't release the material beforehand. They'll release the material only like I think 2.5 months before the bar exam. So once that comes, you pay $35. Basically, it's much cheaper to just pay them, and they'll send you a printed copy of the materials. So you'll have your materials with you. And once you have the materials, then I just like read that materials. And the next time I skimmed through it, like it was sort of a revision, was when I was making the index. And I mean, I regret not. So I thought I was like, I was like, this index is so easy. Of course, it's going to take me only a few minutes. And then I realized like I literally had 10 days to prepare the index. And like my husband stopped studying for his medical residency exams. And he had to help me prepare the indexes. And for 10 days, like from morning 8 a.m. to night, like 10 p.m., we were just sitting and making an index. And that was just for one subject. So it took us like 10 days for two of us to prepare. So I would recommend people to just create their study groups beforehand and decide how they, want to create the indexes and make their indexes. Yeah, and sometimes the other, for solicitor exam, I thought I had the index because I got it all online. But the problem was every year they change the page numbers slightly. And the moment your page numbers change, I mean, it's as good as like having to redo it again.
Right. So what are the laws that you really had to like read up? Like, what are the areas that it focuses on?
So the focus is on, of course, constitutional law. In terms of the bar exam, I think there's a lot of focus on ethics because for other subjects you'll have separate sections. Like they'll be like, okay, this for the business law section, this for the contract law section, this for the real estate law section. But when it comes to ethics, it could be in any part of your exam, so you don't know which section to look at. So even if you have your index ready, I mean, your ethics questions will be scattered everywhere. So I think you really need to have a strong hold of your ethics for your bar exam.
Right. Okay. So what are some of the more difficult things that you like in your experience in this whole process that people need to watch out for? Any subjects that are harder than the others?
In my experience, I mean, one of the things I faced was like, I don't know if this is just me being ignorant or I don't know if it applies to others, but I mean, I really didn't have any historical background into the indigenous people. And in the NCA exams, it focused a lot on the indigenous people. So in any part of your material, like especially in foundations of Canadian law, if you come across, anything on indigenous people, please focus on it, because they will ask you questions, and Canada is taking that commitment very seriously. So the Canadian Bar Association and everybody, they say that, we'll ensure that people are educated about the indigenous people, they know about their history and things. So they really focus on indigenous people. So that question comes inevitably in your exams. And what else? So for the other subject that I heard from others, and this, I mean, I didn't find it that way, but many others who had come for the criminal law exam when I was writing the NCAs in Delhi, a lot of them had failed the criminal law exams. So people were saying that they found criminal law much tougher, but I thought it was very similar to, India's
Indian law. Right.
Yeah. The way we'd approach in like criminal law and law school, and it felt very similar to me.
What are the other similarities with Indian laws that you find when you are in Canada? Like, I'm sure a lot of corporate practice would be quite similar, like contracts would be similar to a large extent.
Yeah, like basic concepts are all the same. Your common law concepts all remain the same. Your juris concepts remain the same. your constitutional concepts, and like, the whole federal state remains the same, like federal, provincial, it's so your concepts are not like, there's no concept which is absolutely unheard of. The only difficulty I had in terms of commercial, the other one was real estate, because real estate is managed very differently and it's very highly regulated here. So the only challenge I had in understanding how the system works was for real estate. Yeah.
Okay. And so, once you are there, like that, I have two questions after this. One is very important regarding LLM. Do you think people should do an LLM if they want to move to Canada? Because a lot of people primarily do that. There are very few people who move to Canada without doing an LLM, just by giving exams. Many people choose to do an LLM there first. Is there any advantage to doing that, or would you know about, since you haven't done LLM? Of course, I meet maybe a question, but have you considered this angle before, that why not do an LLM in Canada or something like that?
So I mean, I considered moving to Canada after I finished my LLM at California, UC Berkeley. But a lot of people, what they do is they apply for an LLM in Canada. The people who've not done an LLM, I mean, if you know you are moving to Canada, it just makes more sense to do it in Canada and not do it elsewhere. I mean, if you do an LLM in India, it doesn't add any value. Or if you do an LLM in North America, yeah, it adds value. But the reason why people do an LLM in Canada, one is that, yeah, you do get a better idea about the legal system. But if you've done an LLB, then it's nothing that you can't understand. The reason why they choose to do an LLM in Canada, I think primarily is to gain access to the market. It's about the fact that, if you're in a good university, they will have tie-ups with, they'll have employment fairs, job fairs, and, employers will come to your campus. So it's mainly to have access and foothold into the market rather than just for academic purposes. So I think for people who've not done LLM and they're willing to, take that extra time off, I mean, it's good to do an LLM. And if you are moving to Canada, I would say just do it in Canada.
Right. So yeah, but it is not necessary at all to do an LLM, right? I know people who have managed to not do an LLM at all and still get work in Canada. Is that correct?
Yes. I mean, it's not LLM is not the be all end all. I mean, if you do your NCAs and you've done your what do you call, the bar exam, I mean, it's not necessary for you to have an LLM. I mean, it's not considered.
It is optional.
Yeah.
What is the actually job scenario? I have heard from people who have actually arrived in Canada, then looking for jobs and then struggling to find anything. Lawyers, right? So what is and there are of course others who find jobs quite easily. What is the job market like? I mean, we'll come to the COVID and lockdown, all that later on. But right now, what is it really like? Forget the COVID part. Like, let's assume that things are normal pre-COVID situation. What was it like?
So the job market, I mean, is not so. As everybody knows, Canadian immigration is easy, right? Canada is accepting immigrants, and your whole system of immigrating to Canada is based on your point system, right? On whether you've done. So yeah, the other thing where your masters can add value is the fact that when they do the point system for your Canadian immigration, this is just from general perspective, that you do get points for having a master. Doesn't matter which master. So that is one thing. So that's from the permanent residency angle. But in terms of academic, and I'm just talking like solely on the academic angle, job is not so easy to find. Like, it's much easier to immigrate here. They'll count your points and they'll be like, okay, you've been invited to like come here and move here. But the job scenario, once you land here, it's not the same. Because you'll be like, if they've taken all that pains to bring you here, there have to be like jobs available for you, right? That's why they're like calling like lawyers and doctors and not God knows who all, but the jobs are not so easily available.
Right.
Eventually people do find it. I'm not saying it's impossible to find, or oh my God, you're never going to find it. People do find it, but it's not easy to just sit there and say, okay, now I have the PR, I'll find a job and then I'll move, because that will never happen. I mean, almost never happen, unless you have a contact here who's ready and waiting for the job for you. It's not going to happen. Plus, like, you'll have to anyways physically come here to write the bar exams, so that doesn't happen anywhere else. job scenario is tough. It's a lot about like in any other part of the world now. It's all about,
Networking.
yeah, it is about networking, and you have to keep an eye out, and you have to be open to doing things. Like I know a lot of law graduates who come here, and they're in my firm as well, like as legal assistants and things like that. So sometimes you have to just do those things to have access to the network. Like you can't come here clueless, and you have to start reaching out to people. Like the one thing you can do while you're in India is to like look out for people and try to reach out to them and see if they can assist you. The other way to get into the system is so one of the parts of the process to do the Canadian bar is articling. Articling is like a mandatory 10-month internship. So if you do so I was exempted from articling because I have job experience, right, of almost 7 years. So I said I don't want to do articling. Also, I had a job offer, so I didn't want to do articling. But if you do the articling, it also like people are more open to giving articling. It's a fixed term thing, and so if you do that, it'll give you access to a lot of people, and which may translate into a job. So sometimes even if you may have experience and you think you're eligible for exemption, it may be a good idea to do it just to get to know the market and get to know people and network with people.
Right. And also it matters a lot about what experience you had in India and whether that kind of experience is relevant in Canada for the kind of job you're searching, right?
Yeah, a bit, because they'll ask you about your background in India, but it's sad that a lot of people also say, oh, what is your experience in Canada? So it's just better to get here as soon as possible. I mean, although I do understand it's not easy to sustain in a foreign country, if you don't have a job. So yeah, you have to come mentally prepared that there may be like certain months where you may not be earning, and the whole law process is expensive. Like the bar exam is expensive, and the materials are expensive, and things are like not so easy.
Okay. So there's somebody asking a very relevant question in the chat. Which states in Canada are the ones where the most job opportunities are there for a lawyer?
I think like I came to Toronto directly. To be honest, I've not been to any other provinces, but I think the most jobs are in Ontario, and that's what I understand from my friends in Vancouver as well. So I think Ontario is like not just Ontario, but Toronto specifically has the maximum number of jobs. Following which there is Vancouver. Then there is, I think, Calgary. I think that's the order. But sometimes if you go to a smaller place, you may find a job much more easily. So I would say just be open to moving. Like I know friends who landed in Toronto and then moved to Vancouver because they got a job like within a month. So people have to just be open-minded when they're here.
Okay. And what is the, like many people who are trying to move to Canada have questions about, quality of life on even the payment they will be getting there compared to India. Like, can you give some sort of a comparison in that way that they can, something that will help them to make up their mind as to whether, the pay is worth it, whether they will have an equivalent lifestyle, or maybe they'll have it will be hard to afford the same lifestyle as they afford in India for a while, and things will get better eventually. What is it really like?
So in terms of lifestyle, so the pay, if you're going to compare your pay with US, it doesn't pay as much as US. I mean, one is in terms of currency, right? Like, so one US dollar is 1.3 Canadian. So uh, in terms of that, but even generally, the Canadian pay is not as high. Like US lawyers will start at 180,000 USD, Canadian lawyers will start at 110,000 Canadian. So if you like compare that, yes, of course, it's a big difference, right? And like you can't think that you're going to leave India and come here and suddenly you're going to become a millionaire and things like that. And even if you earn more in terms of like say like if you convert the numbers like in Indian rupees, right? If you're earning like say 1 lakh a month there and you're earning like 5 lakhs a month here, your rent is also going to be 2 lakhs a month versus 30,000 a month. So one is rent. So it depends on how you can, where you live, how you choose to live. Like some people, they really compromise on where they live and, how much they want to spend on rent. But I think for first 3-4 months, at least 6 months, like, I mean, to count the contingency, people have to be prepared that they may have to bear their costs. Like, so come prepared for like first 3 months. Food is not so expensive. I would say food is pretty reasonable. It's fine. It's very sustainable. Like for one person, you won't spend more than $60-70 a week. So that's food is like that. And it's mainly the rent, which is expensive. The pay will totally depend upon the type of job you get. But like jobs which are like easy to get, like you may if you're a lawyer and you may not have passed the bar, like some of the things that I was looking at, I mean, I didn't have to do it eventually, but some of the things I did look at and saw online was there are a lot of jobs which are like online claims management, where you just pick up the phone and be like, it's for like big public sector organizations, you just pick the phone and answer the claims. They will give that to you without the bar exam. And you just have to like pick the phone and like, do things like that. So those are easily available, like say $60,000 a year. So it may be just enough for you to like sustain yourself for the rent and everything. But again, if you can cut down on your rent, maybe you'll save some money. So I think first 2 years, I mean, you won't be really saving as much, right? Because in India, if you earn like 60-70,000 also, you can pay 10,000 rent and like another 5,000 for food, and that's it. So saving wise, of course, like that part of the world is much easier to save, and only because the rent is much cheaper.
Right. And also I understand that there are, like if this is what I've heard and from some of our LawSikho students who have moved to Canada, that, it's much easier to get jobs in legal technology companies or legal startups where, like not in law firms or chambers, but there are new age companies where they're really looking for lawyers to do other things rather than just practice of law.
Yeah. You don't have to like, even if you may take your time to like write the exam, you don't really have to go all out and like practice law as a lawyer. Like I mean, you can be totally open to ideas where your skills may be very useful, but you may not practice law, right? You may not go to court, or you may not draft documents, but your skills may be very relevant to other parts of the business. So I would say, I mean, you have to be open to ideas. In terms of quality of life, I think the quality of life is much better. My hours are much better than my hours were in Indian law firms, like way better. And the culture is also much better. I think the culture is less harsh. It's people are very respectful of your private time and your private life. Things like, I mean, something that I faced when I was working in India is like, simple things like going to the gym, right? If you were to tell your partner that, oh, I'm not available for 1 hour because I'm going to the gym, they'll be like, no, like come back, you can't go. But here, if you're saying you're going to the gym for 1 hour, they respect that. It's for your health and your well-being, right? So in terms of that, the quality of life and how they value your personal and family life is much better here.
Okay. And what are the other perks of working in Canada for Indian lawyers? So many people are asking this, what should we expect if we move to Canada? Like, what are the perks, or the pros and cons also? Maybe you can say anything.
I think the first pro is the public health system. So that was also one of the things I moved here, right? I mean, I'm not from India. I mean, I was anyway staying away from Nepal, right, which is my home country, and to work. So if I was going to be staying away from home, I would much rather be in a country which has better social security facilities and more long-term planning, right? As Nepalese, I may not be able to buy a house in India, settle in India, and things like that. Then why shouldn't I move to a country where I can do all of that? So when I moved here, I mean, I was absolutely impressed with the public health system. It is like once you move here, within 3 months, you can, of physically being here, you can apply for your state, card, your health card. Once you get the health card, your basic health services are absolutely free. Absolutely, when I say absolutely. And they're not like, when you say, oh, it's free and it's government paid, it doesn't mean that you have to go to a, Indian or Nepalese standard government hospital. They are like very good private clinics, and it's absolutely free. So it does cut down on a lot of your costs. I mean, and it's not like we paid less taxes in Nepal or India or anywhere else, right? Even US for that matter. US doesn't have a public health system. So in terms of public health, I think it's much better than any other part of the world. Other than that, if you have a job, your employer will provide you with health insurance. So anything that's not covered by your government health card, the employer will cover. Like, for example, medicines are not covered by your public health, and that will be covered by your employer will provide you insurance for that. So the health system is very good. In terms of culturally, I mean, there are pockets in different parts of town, say some like Chinatown and Indian, like there's an Indian pocket of the town, and then there is Italian, this thing. So if people who want to stay very close to their community, there's an option for them as well. For people who want to stay separately, there's an option for them as well. In terms of food, like everything that I could eat in India is very readily available here. And that's another advantage to having a very big Indian community, right? You don't feel isolated in a foreign country. So if you want to eat some Indian food, I mean, it's available in like tons of Indian restaurants, and there are tons of Indian online grocery delivery and everything. So you can, I mean, have the same lifestyle here as well.
Got it. So that brings me to another interesting question, that are there opportunities to practice Indian law? Because you have heard that there are lawyers in Canada who are basically helping NRIs with their legal issues in India. There are lawyers who fly from India to Canada often to interact with clients, because there are people from Canada who have land matters in India. There are divorce, family law, succession matters, and there are so many other things. So if you can throw some light on that, if you have any idea.
Yeah, no, it's that's a very good question, because coincidentally, just last week, we got a new client who wants to do business in India. So the more the Indian community expands here, there are NRIs who are going to be inevitably doing business, and they're already doing business. So even in like large law firms like ours, there are now clients who are interested in doing business in India. So absolutely, like, and me having, I mean, I'm one of the few who has an Indian law background and, who's qualified to practice in India. I mean, that was a big plus, right? Because then I am on the forefront of those transactions. And it's something like that would happen inevitably. So having a big Indian community, and Indians are doing very well here. So you will find a lot of work there and a lot of trade with India as well. So it's just a matter of what kind of practice you end up in. And like a lot of people also go into immigration practice, right? If you're going into immigration, I mean, you'll have a lot of clients from India, or who are going to be doing things in India. And so yeah, you'll have that can be very handy.
Got it. There are a lot of people who want to essentially go to Canada to teach or to practice very specialized areas of law, like IP, arbitration, or corporate law. So is that a good idea to have that kind of a specific goal and then move to Canada, or should you just appear, like, get there? And I mean, what's more likely to work? To be very specifically focused on something, or to just go and figure it out whatever comes here?
I mean, when I moved here, I mean, I mostly practiced energy and infrastructure law. When I moved here, I targeted, when I like wrote to law firms and met with partners, I met with partners from those practice areas. I didn't like go and meet corporate. Yes, I was open to it maybe, but my first round of contacts was the partners who were practicing that area. And when you meet them, the benefit is that you know your subject matter well, and they understand what you're saying. And but if you're then just looking online for a job, I mean, you would search with pretty much everything. But if you were to meet people, it's first, like, you can just do your rounds first. You can do first round with the areas in which you're interested, and then move to like more general areas of law.
Yeah, so it is more likely to work out also, because if you have some experience, I think it is more likely to work in those areas, rather than people hiring somebody who doesn't have any experience in a certain area, I would think.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. There are a bunch of questions. We can start taking some questions. So there's a question about the fact that you have been from a top law school, and the question is that you went to NLS Bangalore, and then you went to a top law school in the US, and then you worked in a several good law firms and at Apple. So do you think it has been easier for you to get to Canada, or I mean, are there people who have it much harder if they have to move to Canada?
To be honest, I think it does play a vital role. I mean, fortunately or unfortunately, it does play a vital role, because people are interested when they see, your resume, which has something that you have to offer them, or some insights that you have to offer them. And like going to a school in North America was also helpful, especially because it was UC Berkeley as well. It wasn't any other school. That they know that you are aware of how this part of the world functions. And then having relevant experience at Apple, it was helpful because they are like, how a multinational can do business in different parts of the world, even in India, and how those companies work. And in terms of law firms, yes, it was helpful to have Luthra and Trilegal on my resume, because they know, when I joined this law firm, they're like, it's not like I didn't know what I was like looking for in a law firm. I'd been to other big law firms, and how they function. And essentially, law firms function in similar way. The core of the law firm is similar. So yeah, I think it was very helpful.
So if somebody is trying to move, it is a good idea to do things in India, do well in India, and then to look for opportunities to move.
I wouldn't say it's an absolute, because you just never know what's in store for you. You may just reach it at the right time, meet the right people, and it may just work out as well. But it's better not to come like absolutely clueless. At least do some research, reach out to some people. And the other thing I would like to tell people is that unlike the culture in most Southeast Asian countries, you can just email people here. You can just like go into like firms websites, and if you think something is exciting, it's very okay to do cold calls. You can just email them saying you're interested, and anyone will take out, if they have the time, they will take out time to meet you for a cup of coffee for 10 minutes.
Great. Whenever anybody, many of our students who are at LawSikho who are interested in moving to any other country, not specifically to Canada, what we advise them is that you start reaching out to people on LinkedIn through emails and see if you can collaborate with them in any way. Like, see what they're working on. If they're writing articles or they're arguing certain cases, and there are some insights you can offer, you can reach out, you can assist them in research writing. You can even ask them to collaborate on some kind of research, and then once they get to know you, they get to see your quality of work, it's much easier to initiate conversations around, can I get a job, or even asking for references. Everything becomes much easier. So if you can build a relationship with 10 different people over the next 1 year, whether, it applies to anywhere in the world, I believe. People who want to move to Dubai or to Germany or anywhere, I think, would you say it applies to Canada also? It's quite easy for people to reach out, start working on something which is not, I want a job, but let's start working on something. Can you actually think how you can refer Indian clients with Canada business to somebody?
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. And those are skills that would apply to any part of the world. And you have to be comfortable. Like, we are not comfortable saying, oh, why would a partner at this big law firm, ever read my email or ever reply to me? But you'll be surprised, because Canada is so diverse, and they're open. They know it's not unusual to have immigrants here. Like, everybody knows people immigrate to Canada, and most people immigrated themselves. So it's not unusual for people to like, and people have reached out to me as well many times, and I've been open to meeting them for coffee. And if they don't have the time, they're like, okay, just come to my office building for 10 minutes, we can have a cup of coffee. And that 10 minutes could sometimes make or break. And that's what happened to me that's how I got the job. Because the partner, like, when I first landed in Canada in September 2017, this is my journey, but in September 2017, I came to Canada for like 3 weeks. I had taken my annual leave from Apple, and I just came here to do my entry, and I didn't know if I was going to ever leave Apple and move here. And, if so, when would I do it? Because it had just been a year at Apple. I came here and I was like, okay, nevertheless, let me just reach out to like one of the partners at my law firm, and let me meet him and see how it goes. And he was literally the first person I met when the first professional contact I met when I came here. I met him in October 2017, and like, when I came back in November 2018, and he was the first guy I just reached out to, saying, hey, I'm back. Should I would be happy like to meet, or if there is any opportunity you may have. And next thing, he just is like, okay, fine, my other two partners are going to interview you. And so, maybe something, he met me and then something impressed him. And like 1 year later, I'm like out of nowhere from somewhere in India. And I'm like, he came here and just reached out to him, and he was happy to meet me. So you never know.
I think multiple meetings are also important. Like, you cannot, everything does not happen on the first meeting. You might want to, have several meetings, and then things are more likely to work, right?
Yeah. And in fact, after he met me for the first time, he had emailed me saying, let's meet again. But I was flying back to India. And I was like, oh, I'm going back to India already. And then he didn't, of course, like reach out to me, because they don't want to, like, they're not that desperate that they're going to reach out to you saying, oh, come back from India. No, we want just you. It's not like that, because there are many people here. So physically being here is absolutely important, because after that, when I moved here, I said, I'm here for good. Let me know I'm free anytime you want to meet me. So they'll just be like, oh, tomorrow are you free for coffee? So things like that, so you have to be available. So being here, so it would be the one thing that I think would be wrong to think is that you're going to sit there and find a job. It is absolutely rare until you're transferring within your existing organization.
Right. Even in India, it's the same thing now. People are finding it harder to get job unless they network, unless they reach out, unless they add value to other people. So definitely the same applies when they're going international, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll take some questions from YouTube now. There's a question on, is it advisable, Anish Sethi is asking, to attempt all the 5 NCA exams together?
I would say it's not impossible. I mean, if I had the time, I would have done all 5. I did the first one. I did only one for the first one because I was like getting engaged that month. So I just did one. But then I did the other 4 together. It's just physically tiring because I hadn't written in really long. So writing 3 hours back to back each day, I mean, that was a bit painful. But other than that, I mean, you can absolutely do it.
Got it. There's a question about, there are questions about articleship. We have already addressed those. There's a question on by Prachi Shet. She's asking, I've completed my LLB and LLM in India and I'm working as an IP lawyer since about 2 years. If you could give some field specific scenario, like IP law specific scenario, she's asking.
IP law, I mean, I don't have much insight into IP law because I mostly practice energy and infrastructure, but there are many companies, and Toronto right now is the hub of tech startup. Even companies which are in US, like the big ones that, Google, Apple, Microsoft, they're all moving offices to Canada. Yep. So they're hiring, IP is a big thing here. So Toronto is really the right place to be in right now, especially because there are a lot of tech startups here.
Tech startups. And how about the media industry?
The media industry here, I mean, I don't have much insight into the media industry here, unfortunately.
All right. So there's a question on, I mean, is it a good idea when you are fresh out of a college in India, is it a good idea to try and go to Canada, or should you wait for some time before and you have experience before trying that?
No, I think any time is a good time to move. It just depends on when you decide. Like I decided after my master's, but any time is a good time. And maybe if you can come sooner and do your LLM here, that would be really good because you don't have much work experience. It's better to come here and just do an LLM. And then the good thing about LLM is you have a year to figure things out, and you have a year to know what things are about. So.
And you also get an opportunity like the visa extension to stay and explore everything.
Yeah. No, and you'll get internship opportunities, and your college will, help you get those internships. So I think the sooner you move, the better
it is. And if you do an LLM from Canada, do you still need to do that NCA exam? I think not.
Probably not. I don't think so. I think it's one or the other.
Yeah. If you have an LLM, then you're exam.
Yeah.
Paroma Sengupta is asking, I'm a law graduate and I intend to settle in Canada. Please let me know the process in British Columbia to work as a paralegal.
So there are separate law exams for lawyers and paralegals. So it's a two totally different lines, because initially I was also looking at it. I was like, okay, till I write the law exams, what if I become a paralegal? But paralegal is not just any lawyer who has law skills, but is not a lawyer, It is a specific profession here. So if they have to be a paralegal, they have to there's a whole set of process. But if you're going through it and you're a lawyer, why don't you just do the lawyer's process? 1. 2 is that, so each province has their own set of procedures. And the bar exam is the same, but the procedures are the bar exam is different in terms of, I wrote the Ontario bar exam. The NCAs is common everywhere, I think, but I wrote Ontario bar exam. But once you're qualified in one province, you can easily work in the other province. So it's not like, US where you can't work with California bar, you can't work in New York or anything like that. It's easily movable here.
Can you talk a bit about the permit system, the work permit and the permanent residency system, and what does it take to qualify?
So for the permanent residency, I did my application through express entry. And I started my application in, I think, May 2016, and I had my PR by Feb 2017. So that was fairly fast. The first thing you need to do is get your documents assessed through the WES, I think World Education Services, because the whole immigration is based on the fact that, these are for federal skilled workers. So you have to be skilled, and you get a lot of points for your IELTS scores. You get your points for your education. You get your points for work experience. And that's when the masters counts, right? Because if you have masters, you do get points for masters. So having a master's and not having a master's, that's where it makes a difference. Then you get points for your age. So it's also, I think, the reason why people don't move fresh out of college is you're like 24 when you move out of college. But the permanent residents, like your ideal age to move is 27 to 30, 31. Because so means they are looking for someone with little more maturity, with little more experience, because they're already looking for someone who has the skills to move.
So what happens when you are older than 30, 31?
I mean, as you grow older, your points reduce. So the points like decreases. So if you're, I think, between 27 to 31, if you're getting 5 points, then if you're 2 years older, you get 3 points and 2 points and so on. So it's point based. Now I did the process a while ago in 2016, so I don't remember it like 100%. But
sure, that's fine.
Yeah, but once I applied, after it takes months. It takes mine came in 10 months or so, but some people takes year and a half. So they'll invite you to apply. Once you get the invitation to apply, then they'll ask you to submit police reports and your health assessment. And in India, I think I did my health assessment at Max Hospital in Saket. So they do those tests and everything, and then once you submit that, I think it took about 6 months, 5 months actually, to get the so they'll give you a non-immigrant an immigrant visa, one-time immigrant visa for you to do your entry. Once you enter, they'll put you in the system, and within 3 months you'll get your PR card, and that's about it.
Got it. So there are some also methods to invest and move to Canada, I believe. If you're a little older and it is difficult to get it through this point system, you can also, the other way to do it is to bring a little bit of investment, buying property, or set up a small business, I believe.
Maybe, but I've not looked at those options. So most people I know, my friend circle, they move through the express entry system. Some of them move from the US because of visa issues, and then some of us move from India. Okay. But if you have if your spouse has Canadian passport or Canadian PR, then they can sponsor you to Canada. So that's another option. In that case, they are just interested in looking at whether your spouse can support you, so their financial status. And the other thing is whether your relationship is legitimate or not. And there is a very strict test of
that. Okay. That is interesting. How do they test a legitimate relationship? There's a question on can you throw some light on securing an articling position? Sakshi is asking.
So I got an exemption, but I think the Law Society also helps you to secure an articling positions. Yeah. And articling positions are fairly easier to get. I mean, easier in the sense that people may be more willing to give it to you. They are paid. It's not free. I mean, you do get paid, so it's a good thing. It's minimal, but it's some payment. The other thing is, with the big law firms like ours, most of the articling students, they already take them from existing universities like Osgood Hall and places like that. So they have tie-ups with these universities, and the articling students mostly come from these law schools. So it's very hard to get into. The challenge that I faced is that it was extremely rare to find the job that I found, only because big law firms have a process, and they are very exhaustive processes. So these students, they'll get them for articling. They'll first get them for their summer internship from the law school, say Osgood Hall. They get them from Osgood Hall for summer internship. The following year, in their second year, then in the third year, they'll get the same people for articling. After their, the whole thing is over, they'll get them for articling. So they'll article. And then eventually those will translate into jobs. And, they have these fixed, top law schools, they'll just get them from there. So it's very hard to break into a system which is so set, right? And like those positions are already like preoccupied for those people. Now luckily my firm was open to, exploring and, like giving a chance to someone else. And maybe it was my resume, I don't know, but I was probably, I mean, I haven't come across anyone else in the firm who just came the way I did. So when they were interviewing, they didn't know like what kind of questions should they ask me, what kind of process should they follow. So I was given first I did like multiple rounds of interviews, and I interviewed with 12 partners, and then they gave me a written test, and then they gave me a take home test, and they're like, what else should we test her on?
Okay.
So they're like, this is as new for us as it is for you. So they had never like gone off their system and hired people. And the bigger the firm is, the more difficult it is to crack and get something out of the system. But I'm very lucky because they gave me the opportunity and they were open to doing that. So that's like really great that they were open to doing that.
I understand. Okay. Of course, like, depending on the merit of a candidate, they might change the process a little.
Yeah. That's the thing with North America, right? If they want something, they will go out of their way to get it. That they can tweak the system.
There's a question on how good is the prospect of a taxation lawyer with an Indian CA. I think he's an Indian CA and LLB, and completes the process of becoming a lawyer in Canada. Anything about CA plus LLB? Like, I don't know.
No, I don't know about that. Like, because unless they plan to practice tax, maybe it could be useful for Indian corporations here who also have business in India. And, there are a lot of Indian corporations actually who have business in India, who plan to do business in India. So it may be very helpful for those corporations. I mean, it's just that because my area of expertise is construction, and the construction companies and projects that we work with are mostly in North America or in, Latin America or Mexico. I mean, that's the reason. I don't have much idea, but there is large business in India.
Understood. There's a question about, Sanchi Chabra. I think basically the question is that should I take PR before I do an LLM? If I'm going to do an LLM in Canada, is it better to take the PR first and then do LLM there? Is that an idea? Like, what do you think? Any?
If you've not done either, I would say you should do both the processes simultaneously. There's nothing that stops you from doing the processes simultaneously.
Will I have to pay less if I am a permanent resident in Canada LLM?
Yeah, it does make a difference.
So I think that's an important thing, right? So get a PR if you can get, you might have to pay less.
Yeah, it's just then you lose out on the time because your PR may come in, like mine came very early, and I didn't know like I at that time, but I had like 481 points, which is considered fairly high. So even then it took me about 9 to 10 months to get the PR. So, if you're like willing to wait for that year and a half, and if you think the cost benefit analysis is worth it, then absolutely, because you will pay 1/4 the fee that you were paying.
1/4 of the fee.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
For local residents.
Awesome. Okay. There are a lot of questions. There are some 50 new questions. Let's take a few quickly. There's another question on taxation consultancy market, but I think you mentioned something already about that. Does a CS degree help if I go to Canada?
I don't know.
There's no profession of company secretary in Canada, right?
I don't know CS. I don't think there are CS.
There is not, yeah. It's not there. In most of the world, there is no CS profession.
Yeah. It may help you if you're a lawyer in understanding how finances work. Like if you're preparing loan documents, of course, you will probably be better prepared to answer those questions than I will be, about generally how financing works. Maybe you should focus on those practice areas, or, just like join like business. You could even like join them as, business solutions person in a company.
Right. There's a Ryerson program which lets you skip the exam. I'm not sure what that is. Like, you have anything? Somebody's mentioning something about this Ryerson program.
Yeah, probably it's like an LLM that you have certain courses, and if you take those courses for so many months, and then you can, it's considered equivalent. So, these things are always changing. You just have to look out when you're going to do it, and if so, that's eligible at that time.
Got it. There's Priya, I'm going for my LLM at McGill University this year. When should I start preparing for my NCA if I want to get a job by the end of this academic year? And is it mandatory for a law firm to recruit only people who have taken NCA exam? I think you don't have to give it if you're going to McGill. NCA exam may not be necessary. Bar exam.
Yeah, only bar exam.
Right. There's a question on, there's one question that I wanted to ask. How has COVID impacted the job market? Is there a difference you are seeing in that? I think that's a question we must ask before we wrap up.
Yeah, no, COVID has impacted the job market. For many law firms, they have cut down the salaries. For big fours like KPMG and Deloitte, they have cut down salaries. So most people are at the moment cutting down salaries by 20%. But they're also saying it's not salary cut. They're saying it's voluntary time off. So you get, instead of working like, so many hours in a day, you work 20% less. So it's not like, they're taking all the work from you, but they're paying you 20% less. So in that sense, you have some time off as well. A lot of people who do work which is like day-to-day oriented, they are most impacted here. So they have, of course, lost jobs. The hospitality sector, the aviation sector, I mean, those are obvious sectors which I think have lost jobs across the globe because of the pandemic. So they are impacted. Lawyers right now, we are not impacted so much in terms of our business per se, because it's considered an essential business in Canada. At least for Ontario, it's considered essential business. The thing is that if the market and economy doesn't grow, then there is like very little work for lawyers as well, right? There are going to be fewer transactions, but disputes are likely to increase once the courts reopen because of force majeure. So that may happen.
Okay, there's a question from Utsav. He's saying that I have got a Georgetown University LLM and I have 4 years PQ in dispute resolution, but in boutique firms. If I don't have a top tier law firm experience in my home country, would that create any impediment in recruitment process?
Maybe not. It depends on where you're applying, but it's not, the craze about, I have to work in an Amarchand or a Trilegal or a Luthra or, one of those. It's not so much here. Yes, they do recognize that you've worked at top law firms, but it's okay to have experience in other types of law firms as far as your knowledge on your subject matter is very sound.
Okay. There are questions about if I don't want to do corporate law and I want to do dispute resolution litigation, is there enough opportunity?
Yes, there's ample opportunity. In fact, a lot of people do dispute resolution because I think it's much easier to set up your own practice if you do dispute resolution.
Okay, and you can, in Indian lawyers fare well in Canadian courts.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think there's any reason not to, right? Because I mean, in India also the practice is all in English, and here also the practice is in English. Unless you go to Quebec, it's in French. But other than that, and if you're bilingual, I mean, you're absolutely, if you can speak English and French, then that's it. Then there are many more jobs open to you.
Or if you speak both, that is even better.
Yeah, because most of the government works in both languages, and some companies who are setting up like offices, like I applied to one of the jobs at Tesla, but I mean, it required me to be bilingual and I don't know French.
Okay. There's a question, this I think is in many people's mind. Any preference to Punjabis to get a job by Tanvi?
Yeah. There's a big Punjabi community, and it may be actually a blessing if you know people here. They may know someone who knows someone, and that's how networking works, right? So yeah, it could be beneficial.
It should be beneficial. Whenever you have a large diaspora, it should be very useful. There are a lot of questions, but mostly these are similar questions. I don't see anything different. I'll just quickly scroll down to the end and see if there are any new questions. Wow. Let's just allow somebody to speak on the mic. Bharat, I have given you access to speak on the mic. Please go ahead and ask any questions you have. Yeah, please. You're online. Okay. Bharat is not saying anything.
No, sorry, I don't have anything.
Okay. Tridev, I've unmuted you.
Yeah, hello. Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask this question as in what is the prospect of a dispute resolution India qualified lawyer seeking a job in Canada or maybe practicing whatever it is. So what do you think? What are the prospects like?
What are
Uh,
the?
yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I think it's like any other lawyer. Like you have as much opportunity here as any other lawyer, and the forms of dispute resolution. Like if you look at some of the articles that we've written, uh, there we talk about adjudication. So they recently introduced adjudication for construction related disputes. So that's another form of dispute resolution, right? So in addition to your mediation, arbitration, negotiation, and litigation, you also have an adjudication process. And it's a whole new process. It's a new practice. It's something that people have no idea about. So it's like if you come into the market right now, the Canadian law is as clueless as you would be. So I mean, for me, luckily that's what happened to me as well. So when I moved here and I got my job, the Construction Act had changed drastically, and they introduced like major amendments to the act, and the amendments were so different that like everybody was as new to it as I was. So that helped me really develop my expertise. So now, because I focus so much on those changes, if there's question in the firm about those changes, they will come to me and ask me that question. So it's very good, easy when the market is changing, and that rarely happens to laws, right? When laws go like all 180-degree flip. So it's lucky to be in the market at that time. And I think for dispute resolution lawyers, you just have to like keep a lookout, and that could be one of your opportunities here, because right now everybody's clueless. Adjudication applies to construction contracts which were entered into after October 1st, 2019, or whose RFP and RFQ was done after that. So, I mean, there are barely any contracts in the market right now which are governed by this. So, if you move at that time, you'll be one of the first to know. The key, I think, is to follow. You can, like all law firms here, like the big ones, the 4-5 big ones, you can Google them. Osler is one of them. We have a lot of material online. If something new releases, we are always writing about it. It's called Osler updates, or like other law firms have their own updates. All you have to do is not prescribe, sorry, subscribe to those articles, which you're interested in. The practice groups, you can just subscribe to like specific, like say, dispute resolution related articles, and you'll get them in your inbox. Just read them. It'll help you know what's happening in the market. And then you know where to find your niche.
Correct. There is a question. There are a lot of questions actually about in-house legal positions. So, what is in-house law practice? We want to be an in-house lawyer in a company in Canada. How is it? And how is it? If you have a lot of experience of being an in-house counsel in India, does it help in any way?
I think if you're moving to a new market, it's always advisable to go to a law firm before going in-house. To move in-house, you have to have substantial experience in that specific market, right? Because I mean, I have worked in-house in investment board and at Apple, and you have to know the market, and your understanding of law has to be so sound that, because you are going to be their sole legal expert, right? Unlike a law firm where there are 100 other lawyers and you can talk to another lawyer. And also the types of issues you'll be seeing in a law firm will be very diverse, because you'll have hundreds of corporations as your client versus one corporation which is your client. So I think it's better to gather the experience first in-house and then first gather the experience in the law firm and then move in-house.
There's a question if it is useful to get in touch with legal headhunters in Canada.
Yeah, I suggest you could do that. That would also.
Who are the biggest legal headhunters in Toronto?
I have no idea. Like look in LinkedIn and ask around and try to get hold of them.
Excellent. Okay. Research and academic jobs, if you have anything to say.
I don't know of any. Someone who's doing an LLM would to answer that.
Okay, I see a few more hands up. Let's just wrap this up in 2-3 minutes. Yeah. There are a couple of hands up. Let's just be very brief, please. Amir, I'm unmuted.
Yeah, hi. My question is, does it makes a difference if I first go to Canada and then give my NCA papers? Will it make any difference?
No. For your NCA exams, I don't think it makes. I mean, in terms of time, like it's different. Like it's the same. It doesn't make any difference.
Yeah, you might want to give the exam in India and then move with more clarity and one thing out of your way. Yes.
Yeah.
Karman Kaur, unmuted you.
Yeah, ma'am. I just wanted to ask, I came across a couple of diploma courses, like mostly were paralegal courses. So what would you recommend, going for a LLM or going for those diploma courses?
If the cost is the same, I think go for an LLM. If you want to practice lawyer, because it's not like once you take the paralegal courses and if you're going to practice as a paralegal, unless you again do the whole law related process, you are not going to become a lawyer. It's not like one fine day people will be like, okay, oh, you're such a great paralegal, I'll promote you to become a lawyer. That doesn't happen. So there are two different streams which run in parallel. So you can't move from one stream to another till you qualify for the other stream.
Just one more question. Is it so that it is easier to grab a job as a paralegal as compared to a lawyer?
I think both are equally competitive. Maybe paralegal may be a slightly easier, but I think it's worth a shot to try to become a lawyer.
Yeah, better to try it. We have to probably work similar amount to be a lawyer or a paralegal.
Yeah.
Okay, we have ITZ.
Yeah, this is Iqbal from India. I have a question regarding the in-house role, wherein we are working as an in-house counsel for MNCs, and mostly we are dealing with the law of North America or Europe. So will that help when we land in Canada without having a master's in Canada or a NC exams to be a part of corporate world?
They may be interested like to hear from you, but that's like if you don't. So this is how I look at it. Your NCAs and your bar is your bare minimum qualification. Everything else is a cherry on the cake. So if you don't have bare minimum, they may be happy to hear about it, but they can't help you in any way, right? Because they're like, okay, that's great to know, but why don't you just like let us know once you are through the process?
Right, and you might be able to work as a in sales or marketing or something like administration, but you won't be able to work in as a lawyer. So and it's okay. I mean, you might want to work in business development. You can explore.
Yeah, then it's different. Yeah, if you want to work in business development, like law firms here have extensive teams on business development and marketing and things.
And knowledge management, research, all of that is possible. Okay, Muskan, you have a question? Please quickly.
Yeah, good evening to the bench. My question is, how important is it to get a work experience before applying for a PR?
I think you get points for work experience. So it depends on where your points stand right now. Like you can do those rough assessments, right, online, how your points are. So having some work experience is of course better because they are looking for like the whole program of express entries, federal skilled workers. So experience adds value.
Okay. Gurmukh Singh, a quick question, please.
Hi, Jagriti. So this webinar was actually very useful. So I have just one question. Am I audible?
Yeah, please ask the question quickly.
Okay. So my question is that while we try to pursue our LLM, so hello? Actually,
yeah, we can hear you. Don't worry. Finish your sentence, please. What is the question?
Hello.
Yeah, we can't hear Gurmukh, so let's move on. Pritish, last question I'm taking. Pritish, quickly.
Yes, I just have a couple of questions. First is, how is it necessary to clear the bar exam if you want to get into a corporate field or non-litigation? And second of all, how many years of experience do you need to be exempted from the articleship?
So to be exempted from articling, articling is for 10 months. You just need more than 10 months of experience in a law firm, which meets so they have a certain criteria of what students here do at articling, right? So you have to just get a letter from wherever you worked saying that your employer should write a letter saying, yeah, they did. Just try to match the skills exactly, right? If they say they have, worked in compliance with the ethics code and, they used to do their, say, time dockets, on time and they're on time and things like that, or they have done legal research, then just you have to get your employer's letter and make sure the letter says similar things to what the criteria is. And that has to be for more than 10 months. So that's more than enough.
Okay, great. So thank you so much, Jagriti. It's already 15 past our time, so let's wrap this up. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your insights and knowledge and experiences. It was a wonderful session. I'm sure many people will benefit from this, and it would also be up on YouTube. And already a few hundred people have watched it and on YouTube, and many would be watching this later. So thank you so much for sharing so many valuable insights, and hope to have you again another time asking other questions. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a
Bye.
great day.
You too.